Welcome to the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast. I'm Brandon Jaffe. Join us as we explore relationship and mental health issues by weeding out the trends in the mental health industry to uncover what truly works in improving our emotional well-being and relationships. At Inspired Resolutions Counseling, we specialize in providing interventions and resources for families with teens, focusing on topics such as teen mental health, parenting challenges, and family dynamics. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to talk about this concept, the idea that trauma, adversity, mental health struggles may not be your fault, but they are your responsibility to manage. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of my therapists that worked for me, she created some online content that was really cool. And she runs a group for women who have suffered trauma in relationships and want to work together to be healthier in relationships. And it's a great group. And as some of the content for that group, she put that your trauma is not your fault, but managing it is your responsibility. And that I think that applies to so many things in life, especially as parents. While that statement might sound heavy at first, stick with me, and I want to help people shift their perspective. I think that this concept can be a really powerful tool of empowering ourselves and empowering our children. Our resentments, the things that we've experienced in life, they affect how we parent our children, and it's our responsibility to heal and resolve those things as we parent our children so that we are making decisions based on health, not based on the baggage that we carry. And let's be honest, every parent carries around some baggage. Some of us have experienced trauma growing up, or might have experienced not having a parent who is physically or emotionally available. Some people suffered a great loss and are going through grief. We've all been exposed and had to endure things in life. Some people have endured trauma that I can't even comprehend. And some things are what we would think of as just kind of small things. But we all experience adversity, and many, if not all of us, to some extent, experience mental health struggles. None of these things are necessarily our fault. It's a part of living, and some of it is great tragedy, and we're victims of things in life. But I think that the lines are being blurred. We almost have gotten into a point in society where, because it's not somebody's fault, we're not admitting and voicing and holding people accountable for taking responsibility in healing. And sometimes that means asking for help. I don't think you should do it alone, but it's still your responsibility. And when you carry that unprocessed pain and trauma into the relationship with your child, you do it without realizing it usually, and you end up causing some damage. And we want to make sure that we're not doing that, or at least taking control of and reducing some of that damage that we might cause. And when parents don't take responsibility, or maybe they don't have the expectation that their child takes responsibility for their own adverse or traumatic experiences, then what may happen is this dynamic of codependency and enabling. That is never, ever a healthy dynamic to a relationship. Here's an example that's kind of on my mind because of the work I'm doing. But imagine there's a mom named Lisa, and she grew up in a home where love was conditional. She was always praised and given accolades when she performed well. But when she struggled or made mistakes, she was met with the silent treatment or was heavily criticized. So then you take that parent, and she feels anxious when her son, let's say Jake, is struggling. And she can't stand to see him in pain and remembers how horrible it was to be treated with the silent treatment or deeply criticized for making mistakes. And instead of allowing him to work through difficulties, she steps in and fixes everything for him. Out of love, does not want him to suffer the way that she suffered. And so she might take more responsibility than needed when he's overwhelmed with homework and maybe even makes excuses for him to school when he is having a bad mental health day and bails him out when he makes poor choices instead of just walking alongside him as he experiences the consequences of his own decisions. For Lisa, it feels like it's love, and it is coming from a place of love. She doesn't want her son to suffer the way that she did. But what happens is Jake learns that he doesn't have to take responsibility for his own actions. He doesn't become overly thankful and see how amazing his mom is. He starts to expect that mom will rescue him. And as he doesn't even realize he doesn't have the skills to navigate life, to navigate through challenges, he becomes entitled. And over time, as Jake isn't so cute and maybe is kind of a snarky teen that doesn't want cuddles and isn't really filling Lisa's heart the way that he used to, what happens is Lisa becomes drained, becomes exhausted, and without realizing it, becomes resentful. This cycle becomes very interesting because while she feels exhausted and doesn't feel good about the help she's giving, she doesn't know how to stop giving the help because Jake is not prepared. And she gets in this cycle of, I feel guilty, so I've got to do the things that I know I should stop, and I don't know where the line is drawn. And so there's this cycle that began all because Lisa never processed her own fears of rejection and failure, and she's overcompensating. She's unintentionally creating a dependence and an entitlement that is wreaking havoc on the relationship and setting her son up for failure. It's important that we either don't enter into these cycles or we learn how to break these cycles once we recognize what's going on. It's important that we recognize our past wounds and that we can see where maybe we should take responsibility and it wasn't our fault. It might mean that you've got to full-blown go to therapy. It might mean that you find a group of people who has similar experiences that you can do life with. It might mean doing any number of things, but the longer you ignore these things and pretend like they're not affecting you, the harder it's going to be to truly heal. Because what happens is if you ignore it or don't acknowledge it long enough, you almost trick yourself into thinking, oh yeah, it's not affecting me anymore. Oh, that wasn't a big deal. I healed from that because I don't feel the pain on a daily basis anymore. But it's important that you recognize that you might be making decisions based on those experiences and past feelings. You've got to acknowledge those emotions that you ignored for years or that you weren't aware of. And it's important that you become aware of your triggers and your fears and the guilt that keeps coming in. And you take responsibility for not just being aware of it, but healing or growing through those issues. If you take a look at the Lisa and Jake example, imagine that Lisa starts working on her past and learning to sit with discomfort. That is so important. Look, a lot of growth. In fact, I'd say most of our true healthy growth in life as parents, as individuals, comes from sitting with being uncomfortable, the discomfort, instead of reacting immediately and doing what seems easiest. It's that patience piece also. Let's say the next time Jake forgets to do an assignment, and instead of fixing it, she stops herself. And she says, hey, I know you're overwhelmed, but I believe in you. You can figure this out. And here's the ways that I'm willing to help. And these are the boundaries for the help that I'm willing to give you. So as this plays out, what happens is Jake might be very angry, and that's okay. That's a part of the discomfort. Lisa's got to sit with that discomfort of shifting the dynamic to a more healthy dynamic and not have the expectation that Jake's going to respond like some sort of picture perfect movie type thing. She's parenting now from a place of responsibility rather than reacting to her past trauma experiences and the comfortably miserable part of her life. And then she's got to remind herself, I still am supporting my son, Jake. But I'm also teaching him that his struggles are his to navigate and he is capable. And if he's not capable, he'll become capable. It's interesting because I think in this day and age, we pretend like everybody's capable. Look, sometimes you've got to fail and fail and fail again to become capable. And Jake will, in time, be more likely to develop resilience, to get rid of entitlement. And Lisa will have the opportunity to be at peace with her parenting instead of resentful, which means that she might have more to give during an appropriate time to give to her son as she walks alongside this human being that she loves so much. What this teaches also is that you're both modeling and expecting personal responsibility. That is a gift that is understated and not talked about enough in my book. The understanding that while you might not be to blame for everything that happens in life, you have the power. And if you don't have the power, it is your duty to get the power to overcome and respond to things in a healthy way. That's something that we should be modeling and teaching all of our kids as we raise them. And it is not going to be comfortable as we go through these periods of life with our kids. Here's another example. Let's say you have a teen, Emily, who struggles with anxiety. If she hears from her parents that this is just the way that you are, there's nothing you can do about it, she's going to believe that she's powerless. No parent who's decent would say that. You're not going to say, oh, hey, Emily, you struggle with anxiety. You will never be able to overcome this. That would be terrible parenting. Here's the message, both through our actions and raising our children, that we want to give somebody is anxiety sucks. It's tough. It is not your fault that you suffer anxiety. Here are the resources I'm willing to help you out with. And because I love you, because I believe in you, I am putting the management of these resources, the follow through with these resources on you. And because I love you and I know that you're not helpless, and I'm going to be patient in watching you grow, I'm still going to have expectations and boundaries with you, even though it might be tough for you. That changes everything. That is an empowering mindset and dynamic with your child. But it's a hard one to have because it's hard to figure out the lines. Where do we have grace and patience and understanding, and where do we kind of stick to our guns and have expectations? And I think those two things fit like a glove when you really think about it, when you're not being unkind and you're not putting them down. It's just, hey, here's the expectations, the normal expectations. By the way, I know that these are the healthy ways to give you the help and healthy resources to provide for you. And then it's on you to follow through with that. It's embracing responsibility without shame. And I think that's important. We don't want to give shame and get people to take responsibility for their lives through shaming them. Taking responsibility for our healing isn't about blaming ourselves. And I think that's a hard line for people. I got to blame you to take responsibility. No. We want to give the message that, hey, I'm not going to shame you. Even if it is your fault. Shoot, let's be honest. Some things are our fault. Some of the trauma we experience is totally our fault. And whether it's our fault or not, we have to take responsibility. Shaming somebody into it or shaming ourselves into it does not bring us down the path that's healthy and healing. We want to take responsibility, despite whose fault it is, to break cycles of codependency. We want to teach them resilience, not entitlement. And all of this makes it more likely that we will parent from a place that is not resentful, that is likely to foster healthy relationships, especially in the long run. I want everybody listening to this to ask yourself, what part of your own story and life still needs some healing or maybe acknowledgement or awareness? And I want you to write it down, please. Don't try to remember it. Just write it down. Then ask yourself, where are you parenting from fear, unprocessed pain, past trauma, past unhealthy dynamics in relationship? What parts of your parenting, and it might be a lot of it might just be every once in a while, but what parts of your parenting is coming from those unhealthy places? Write those down too. And then I want you to ask yourself, what small step can I take today, right now, literally, right now? The moment the awareness comes, what small step can I take that will be me taking responsibility to being healthier, being a better version of me? I'm not saying you got to finish the healing anytime soon. That's going to be a journey. It might not be for a very long time, if ever, that you fully heal from some of these things. But somebody who's moving forward, somebody who has in their spirit taken responsibility, behaves, acts, and is experienced different than somebody who hasn't taken that first small step, whatever that might look like. I think that this is the key, the taking that responsibility, modeling, taking responsibility, and then encouraging and providing our children with the resources and lessons to take responsibility in spite of being at fault will lead to a lot of families stopping some of that generational unhealthy, repetitious cycles going on in families. And I think that for some of you listening, you might be today could literally be the moment that you stop an unhealthy pattern that's been going on for a long time in your life, in your kids' life, and you could create a better future for your grandkids even. If you said, oh my gosh, this relates to me, I would love for you to, number one, send me a message about that. And number two, listen to this podcast again. And follow through with writing some of the things down, the parts of your own story that still need healing, the areas that you're parenting out of fear or trauma, and then the small step that you can take. And if you get stuck on that small step to take, ask for help. Like I said, send me a message. I'll get back to you. But anyways, I appreciate you listening, and I hope that this was helpful. Please share this message with somebody who might need to hear it today. And if you have any other thoughts or questions or stories or things that you'd like to hear me talk about, drop us a line. Go to our website, inspiredresolutionscounseling.com, or jump on some of our social media and let me know what you want to hear about and what your thoughts are to our podcast. Thank you for listening.
The Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast is an Inspired Resolutions production. Hosted by Brandon Jaffe. Edited and mixed by Natalie Atkinson. Music by Natalie and Sean Atkinson. Inspired Resolutions Counseling is based in Yorba Linda, California. Whether you're interested in joining our group, seeking therapy services, or exploring more of our resources, you can find us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Inspired Resolutions Counseling.